United States Olympic Committee Training Design Symposium, 2007. Randy L. Wilbur, Ph.D. Overtraining, Causes, Recognition, Prevention. This original video was about an hour and 20 minutes long. This is getting ready to be audio notes by Shannon Gillespie. Overreaching versus overtraining. Overtraining is long-term or months, irreversible, recovery, negative training adaptation, competitive season is over, or short-term overreaching. Overreaching is short-term, days, reversible with recovery. Positive training adaptation, needed to improve performance. So that was a description of the differences between overreaching and overtraining. Very simply, overtraining is long-term, overreaching is short-term, overtraining is hard to reverse, overreaching is easier to reverse, overtraining leads to burnout, and overreaching is necessary to improve performance. Other descriptions of overtraining versus overreaching. Overreaching is tear and repair, building over time with recovery built in. Overtraining, tear only with little or no repair or recovery. The author, or Randy Wilbur, believes athletes must experience overtraining once to know where the line is. Better to lose slightly, or better to be slightly undertrained versus overtrained. Leave a little in the tank. So his suggestion is, I'll just go over it again. He believes athletes must experience overtraining once to know where the line is. And to me, that essentially means so that you don't go past that line again, so you know where your tipping point is and or your breaking point is, and you try to just get right to the edge every time without going beyond that point. Because once you go beyond that point, as the description suggests, it can lead to burnout, overtraining, and or it can last for several weeks and months, which is detrimental to competition and performing. Symptoms of overtraining. Over 100 symptoms and counting. Generally, performance gets worse. Physiological, immunological, biochemical, and psychological symptoms add to the list. Another way to say the same thing is there are so many different symptoms for overtraining, it's very hard to put one little finger on it and say that you are overtrained. There was another overtraining description yesterday with recovery, and that sort of suggests a lot of other ideas, and I would recommend listening to that again in addition to listening to this, and then you would have more information. Model number 1, glycogen depletion. Chronic training with poor recovery. Replenishment, carbs are converted into glycogen in body. Model number 2, immunosuppression. Cortisol is increased due to physical or emotional stress. Abnormally high cortisol impairs or compromises immune system. Model number 3, autonomic nervous system imbalance. Parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system are imbalanced. These symptoms control rest or exercise responses and increase or decrease in one or the other could increase overtraining symptoms. Overtraining is complex, and these symptoms or systems are almost opposite in their functions in terms of the parasympathetic and sympathetic. And I guess the description there is very hard to understand which is which and very difficult to detect overtraining if it's affected one parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous systems. Model number 4, central fatigue. Central refers to the brain. Excessive training combined with inadequate carbohydrate replacement leads to increased branched chain amino acids for energy, which leads to increased amounts of serotonin. Serotonin increases drowsiness or lack of desire to train. Model number 5, elevated cytokines. Excessive training leads to excessive muscle soreness in combination with inadequate recovery, leads to chronic inflammation of muscles, fibers, which leads to increased immune response, catalyst for increased monocytes, which leads to increased cytokines, which are specialized white blood cells. Increase in cytokines acts on brain at specific points and specific pathways. Increase in cytokines increases negative responses or symptoms, that is loss of desire for training, decreases appetite, and immunosuppression. So I just gave you 5 different models of overtraining symptoms and or reasons why overtraining could be increased, and I'll just briefly go through them again, and I suggest listening to this again just to get a better indication. Model number 1 is glycogen depletion. Model number 2, immunosuppression. Model number 3, autonomic nervous system imbalance. Model number 4, central fatigue. Model number 5, elevated cytokines. Again, overtraining is very hard to put a finger on. These are scientific theories as to why overtraining is actually can come about. Prevention of overtraining. Models recovery needs to balance many factors, that is training, lifestyle, health, and environment. And these are going to be the models that I was referring to, and these are prevention of overtraining. Model number 1, scientifically logical training program or periodization is first step in preventing overtraining. Many pieces must be put together like a puzzle. Valleys of recovery must precede peak performances. In other words, and again, that last auto notes gives you a better description of recovery, but there is a wave pattern in which your training should be administered. In other words, you have high volume followed by low volume followed by high volume followed by low volume. Other ways to say that is there are valleys and peaks in your training that should exist, and that's going to help prevent overtraining. Essentially, that's a periodized training plan. Less is better. Tapering should be included in periodization, that is decreased training volume and maintenance or increase of training intensity. Taper increases physiologically, increases positive effects, that is testosterone, decrease in creatine kinase, increase in glycogen stores, decrease in cortisol, increase in skeletal muscle, power, and fiber. And so those are all characteristics of what could happen to your body based on scientific testing. And if you are using a taper, those positive responses will happen to your body. Not only will they decrease overtraining, they will give you a better performance because your body is more ready. Model number 2, detailed monitoring of training response, e.g. heart rate, weight, sleep response, training response, chart or matrix over 31 days. Enhancing Recovery is a book by Michael Kelman. Look up Enhancing Recovery and type in Michael Kelman into Google and you'll get that. And one of the detailed monitoring training responses that he came up with was the REST Q. And all of that, those things I just read off to you, heart rate, weight, sleep response, training response, chart matrix over 31 days, those are all monitoring tools. And again, periodization is a way to monitor, and these are other monitoring tools that are going to help you prevent overtraining. Model number 3, nutritional intervention. Many models are dependent on carbohydrates before and after workouts or competitions. First 30 to 60 minutes after a workout, body is more efficient in reabsorbing nutrients just lost. Carbs plus protein cocktails after practice. If any of you are television watchers, you will notice these days advertisers are very savvy with regard to scientific information. As soon as they find this information out, they start creating things that can be sold and purchased in the open market so that they can make money. notwithstanding carbs and protein cocktails after practice, first 30 to 60 minutes is going to help your body nutritionally intervene so that it gets the foodstuffs that it needs to respond and have a better training session the next time out. I guess what I also want to throw in there is a lot of athletes don't eat 30 to 60 minutes after practice because they've just trained and they're fatigued and they're tired and they don't feel like eating. That is one of the reasons why a lot of sport companies or sport scientific companies started making shakes, because shakes are a lot easier to drink after you've had a excruciating hour and a half to 3 hour practice. Anyway, you should eat for the first 30 to 60 minutes after you work out, because your body's more like a sponge. It just lost all the nutrients and you can easily replace them. Number 4 model, biochemical markers. Blood tests during critical points in a training season. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin collects and dispenses oxygen. Hemoglobin contains iron, and iron attaches oxygen in the lungs. Oxygen then releases at muscles and provides energy. Red blood cells is the binding site of oxygen. Erythropoiesis is the synthesis of red blood cells. Iron is transported to bone marrow with other nutrients and materials, then creates red blood cells. Iron is in protein. Iron deficiency can come from diet, training, menstrual flow. Blood tests can detect iron deficiencies or anemia. Anemia can cause overtraining. Decreased cortisol with Powerade, Gatorade right after practice. So that last piece of information there, model number 4, biochemical markers, I suggest listening to that again because there's a lot of stuff going on in there, but I'll try to just give you a quick summary of it. When you are low in iron, that can cause overtraining. That's the bottom line. When you have an increase in iron in your body at, where it would be at homeostasis, you have a better chance of not having overtraining. Now, of course, when you train, you lose a lot of nutrients in your body, so that's why it's really important to eat right after practice, and of course be eating the right food stuffs. If you have blood tests frequently, let's say before and after the season is, a lot of people have physicals and whatnot, you would be able to detect the differences in your blood. And I would say heavy training loads versus lower volume training loads, those would be likely very good times to test your blood. Now, if you're in a high school program, probably not going to be you're not going to have the time and or the resources to do that, i.e. the money. If you're an Olympic training center type of athlete, or if you're a professional athlete, these are very good ways to do that. But there are many other ways that you can test and monitor your systems so that you're fighting off overtraining without actually getting a blood test. And I've just read you basically 4 of them. 3 of them didn't have anything to do with actual testing of blood. Model number 5. Training guidelines during sickness. Keep intensity under control. Short, low volume with increased intensity with head colds. Flu-like symptoms require rest. So depending on what type of sickness you have, you should train or not train. Flu-like symptoms, you probably shouldn't train at all. If you've got a head cold, you can do shorter volumes of training with high intensity, but you just have to pay attention to that. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some people are a little more, how shall I say, sensitive to sickness, and they feel like they can't do anything. And you've got to be understanding which athlete is which, and you got to communicate with your athletes to know who these people are. Nonetheless, if you have flu-like symptoms, you probably shouldn't train at all. Model number 6, passive rest, recovery techniques. Baby sleep, or sleep when you sleep soundly. Stress hormone decreases. White human growth hormone increases during rapid eye movement, deep sleep. Muscle fibers get bigger and stronger. Enzymatic changes take place as well. Therapeutic modalities, hot, cold showers, contrast temperature baths, stretching, massage are all going to be therapeutic modalities. So I've just given you 6 ways to actually monitor your body so that you can prevent overtraining. Again, I would listen to all 5 of those, 6 of those models. I said 5 because one of them is probably going to be out of the realm for most people in terms of getting their blood tests. Those I would suggest would be for professional athletes and or Olympic Training Center athletes, but the other 5 would be very good. Nonetheless, there's 6 of them. Then I would also re-listen to this again and listen to the 5 different models of why overtraining actually happens. And by the way, if you listen to that recovery audio notes and you listen to this, if you listen to them several times, you'll have a very good idea of how to deal with overtraining, how to prevent it, and then how to increase your performance for long